Hello and welcome to the IdeaCast interview series, episode 18. My guest in this episode is Nadia Joynson, and Nadia is an author and a change maker and a self-described pragmatist, and we will be discussing her books in this episode, her first book being Vibrant Self-Leadership. She also authored a series of futurist fantasy fiction for teens, and it is the Leviathan series, and we'll be discussing that as well. So I invite you to join us in what is a very interesting conversation, good insight into working with young people and helping them address the challenges of not only being an adolescent, but being an adolescent in these modern times. And I'd like to welcome Nadia Joynson to the IdeaCast interview series. I'm looking forward to a really vibrant conversation with her. So Nadia, welcome to the interview series. So glad to have you on board. Great to have you. You have a beautiful day there where you are. It looks lovely.
Yeah, I'm in the south of France. Very lucky.
South of France. Okay. See, this is the high quality kind of content I provide in an interview series, exotic locations. So with very interesting people. Anyway, I'm very grateful to have you on the call. Looking forward to a great conversation with you. Now, I would like to start out with asking you a little bit about your background and how you came to be where you are with the work you do.
Right. Well, I guess I was never intending to be an author. Today I'm an author. I work a lot with young people, not only, I work with adults as well, coaching, doing conferences. And I came to that through a very unusual path. Let's say when I graduated, I was an economist. I worked in monetary policy to start off with, which is nothing like what I'm doing now. I worked for a software company for 20 years, where I actually finished in the human resources area. I was looking after the training programs, met a lot of adults who were looking to transfer some of the things that they'd learnt, like nonviolent communication, mindfulness, that we were starting to put in practice, and I can explain to you why, perhaps a little bit later. But they wanted to transfer that to their children. And at that point in time, I realized that there wasn't really much available for children. And this is when I started working on other things. So I started teaching mindfulness and writing as well, mainly for young people.
And that's such a wonderful branch of our humanity that is ripe for learning and taking in new information. So that's very laudable that you chose that. We as adults can coach, mentor, and counsel each other all day long, but really getting to persons who are still learning and being imprinted upon socially, that's just very admirable. And that's one of the reasons I brought you here. Is it's of great interest to me to see, you're producing a product essentially. I hate to be so utilitarian about it, but we are essentially, when we educate children, we are turning out a product or a series of products. So yes, you've landed into that age range, and I'd like to start with you published a book about 4 years ago called Vibrant Self-Leadership, and that was a step or a stage in the development of what led you to get to where you are working as an author and a teacher of sorts. To what would your age range be? Would you be 12 to 16? Is that sort of your target group that you're working with?
I've had children as young as 9 read the book.
Okay.
But I target 10 to 14 mainly, 14, even up to 16, because it's intended to be used in schools to encourage debate. So obviously debate, dialogue can be used as a foundation for that at pretty much any age. But I've had adults read the books as well.
Wonderful.
Series, and they love it too.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
nice. From what I've seen, it's visually impactful. The cover, the artwork, so it reminds me of manga series in Japan and graphic novels and things like that. So I could see the attraction for even in my age range. I'm in my early 50s, and so my generation was just, we sort of got into that late in the game. But I know a generation younger than myself, that's a rich field of entertainment and learning for them. And so the book you published a couple years ago, 4 years ago, was Vibrant Self-Leadership. Would you like to talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah. During the last, let's say, three years that I was working in HR for this international software company, we were actually going through cultural transformation internally. Very, very interesting process where it almost seemed like we were going through this adolescent process of questioning who we are, excuse me, what the future was going to be of the company, what values we wanted to convey, what values we were actually demonstrating that we wanted to continue with, what was actually helping us get to where we wanted and what wasn't. So, and we were looking at new ways, say they're not so new these days, but like six to 10 years ago, ways of flattening the hierarchy, holacracy, all those movements, just to see the kind of organization that we could put in place as well to get where we wanted to go. We needed to keep all the dynamic side of the company, great teamwork, all of this kind of stuff, but without losing the soul of the company. But we were like, what is that soul? So it's a very, very interesting question. And I was very lucky to be able to talk to so many experts at that time, because what I realized as head of learning was that there were no programs already available that were already packaged, or even just parts of them that we could use to help people through that transformation. And at the time I said, starting a transformation like that, which was, company-wide, is like throwing the staff in the deep end of a swimming pool and expecting them to swim and not helping them learn to swim. Changing culture is not a simple thing to do. To put in place a cultural transformation like that, you have to find the blocks of support, so the different pieces, the different elements, to actually help people through that transition. And what I found, and I started to write down, was obviously these learning blocks are interdependent. It's difficult to know whether we have to start with self-knowledge or start with working together as a team, building the collaboration, or how we're going to create in future. And to try and share that with other heads of HR or learning, or just individuals that were going through this process of cultural change or individual transformation, I was trying to more pragmatically put it in different elements that I thought were necessary. So what I believe is that you can't go through a transformation process without standing back. We do so many of these programs, big companies, and we don't give people the time to stand back and integrate what is going on. And I believe in any spiritual work, any learning work, we have to have that time to repeat, to practice, to integrate what it is and try out new behaviors, new ways of being, to see if it suits us and to see if it's actually supporting us to go in the direction that we want. So companies, organizations are obviously there to build something together, to co-create. And sometimes we forget about this element, because we can talk about in spiritual transformation or evolving in ways of being, just to talk about the values of the company, or the values that we share together as a group. But we forget that we need to learn form as well. So things like nonviolent communication as approaches are going to help us to give form to how we actually communicate together. And then there are tools that you can use, different approaches that we can use to actually build together. And so what I saw was pretty continuous in the work that I was doing, is 4 different pillars. And calm, so allowing people to take a step back, using tools like mindfulness, or even just playing golf, gardening, whatever it is, that time to integrate and be calm, and really sort of step back and feel how it is for me right now, because it's an ongoing journey. What I felt yesterday might not be the same emotionally as it is today, as I'm going through that transformation process. So it's important to take that step, that stop, as I said, to calm, connecting to who we are. So if I change what the company is doing, etc., again, how do I feel? How does that associate with who I am as a person? Does it still fit with my values, or do I actually want to go somewhere else? As an adult relationship, perhaps the company the values change, and therefore our contract, subconsciously our contract changes, and therefore we might want to do something about that. So knowing myself, and some people haven't actually been through that process of starting to learn about themselves and what's important to them. We're so in our jobs and what we're actually doing. It's important to stand back from that and really think, what value is that conveying? Where am I putting my time and my energy, and does that align with where I want to go in my life? So that's an important step. Then to connect together. And this is where things like nonviolent communication come in. How do I connect and build relationships, build trust, build authenticity with other people, and then create? So again, the forms, as I mentioned. So going through that process helps us to stand back, and we can almost use that as a cycle. Stand back. How does that fit with me? How does it fit with other people? Does it change the dance that I'm doing with other people? And therefore, how can I put that energy into creating something where everybody is engaged, everybody is involved, and there are new tools which we can use, new ways of working together, which allow us to build together where everybody's involved. And that's so all of those elements for me were important. And as I left corporate life, there were very few books. Stephen Covey was talking about collaborating together. There were some lovely books about win-win, but that chain just seemed to be missing, or perhaps I hadn't found it myself at that time. So I just wanted to write that down. I was working through that process with a lot of managers at the time who started to read what I was writing. I was writing on the networks as well. And I wanted to actually start writing and working with young people, because having gone through this process both personally and also as an organization, as I mentioned earlier, I had more and more parents who were part of the organization who were saying, how do we share these approaches in our families? Can I use nonviolent communication at home? And I said, yes, of course. You're the same person, hopefully, at home as you are here in the company, which we don't feel authorized to do in a lot of cases. So I started testing some of the tools with my own children, and I invited them to do the same thing with theirs, but I only found books and not really so many approaches. And this is where I went off. This was kind of my goodbye to corporate life. Wrote the book. This is everything I know. Take it. Read it if it helps you. If it doesn't help you, it's fine.
That's right.
But yeah, I wanted to start working with young people. So yeah, it wasn't quite a goodbye, because I did a lot of conferences after that.
Okay.
But which was a lot of fun doing. These great people.
And so when you were in that corporate environment and presenting this and distributing this kind of new way of thinking, how was it received by both the rank and file or the workers, or how did management work with it? Was it something that was a bit of a sell for you, or was it taken in kind of intuitively by people? They would kind of get that they're seeing what the possibilities might be if you just change the mindset a little bit. And
yeah, that's a good question. Interesting question, because my approach has always been voluntary. And because of we were trying to put in place a culture that's very adult. So when you start from that intention, you can't come along and say, you need to go to this training, you need to do this, you need to change, you need to. That's very paternalistic. And so this is what we were also trying to avoid, but it also suits what I believe from a personal basis. So I was quite happy to test these things, and I had a number of people who were willing, very open to come to pilot sessions of mindfulness or nonviolent communication. Some of the most interesting building blocks that had the most impact was just giving feedback, how, just deep listening to other people. We brought back in just some of the very, very basic concepts of creating that connection with other people. Now we talk a little bit more about putting your phone down when you're actually having a conversation. There's a difference between listening just to somebody, just to be able to reply, and listening empathically to somebody because you want to create something with somebody else. So even just sharing these concepts with people can be eye-opening sometimes, because we don't learn these things in school, and we're not taught them, through the ranks, and even just coming into our companies. So some of the meetings, for example, that people are putting their phones down, and the benefits of that, well, they adhere. And so it was always like, I would always encourage people to come, give me honest feedback during the PITES. If it's not any use to you, don't use it. Nothing imposed.
Right.
And then they would go and talk at the coffee machines. They would try it at home. They would see. I had people come back and actually say to me, I was promoted because I used nonviolent communication. That's concrete feedback for me. And that's my motor. That's my motor for going forwards and discovering even more and seeing what could help people, really. So
oh, that's wonderful.
That'll be useful in the day-to-day.
That's wonderful. So before we leave Vibrant Self-Leadership behind, I will say to those watching this interview that it is available through the sort of classic online retail outlets. And I will have links below in the description for how people watching this video can access not only your blog site, but means to discover the books and so forth. So you documented everything, you've got it in a book, and you saw a beautiful opportunity to work again with people. Some people call them tweeners or adolescents and teenagers. And so that's how we can segue into the Leviathan series. And I'd love to take a nice deep dive into your Leviathan series and learn. I want to learn about it, and I'm sure there are people here who are watching the interview who will be impressed and interested to learn more. So, Leviathan, the series, 6 volumes.
It is, yeah, for the moment.
Volumes.
I've just started. I thought it was going to be just 6, but
so there are potentially more coming.
Potentially more, yeah, perhaps another
wonderful.
6.
Wonderful. Oh,
yeah.
good. Okay, cool. All right, so Leviathan, tell us all about it.
Well, when I left corporate life, as I said, I started working with young people, and I went back to the UK because I'm actually based in France. I've been here for 20 years, and I learnt mindfulness. I learnt yoga first for young people, but it was the mindfulness part that I was really interested in. And I had the opportunity to listen to a live interview with Daniel J. Siegel, who is somebody that I have a lot of respect for. He writes, again, we can put the links perhaps below, but he is a neuroscientist who works with adolescents in particular, and how their brain forms. So I read Brainstorm and a couple of other books. And just meeting him really inspired me about what we could do with young people to give them the alignment so they could find their own alignment, so share the tools to allow them to do that. And so I trained to be a mindfulness teacher, and there was very little mindfulness in France at that particular point in time. Now, fortunately, it's a lot more common. Don't need me anymore. And I just, the program that I taught, I just loved. It was practical, interactive. So we said to the young people, try it. If you don't want to try it, fine. Put your head on the table. If you're not interested, you can just listen if you're curious. But if you want to try it, try and see what it does for you, not for me. And there's no results for once, nothing academic. Just see whether you feel perhaps less anxious, whether it helps your relationships, whether you sleep better. And what inspired me, apart from obviously working with young people and seeing some of the results that it was giving them, to be able to stand back from some of the chaos. Obviously, there was less at the time than it obviously is going on with all the transition at the moment. But even just in their personal relationships in the house, some of them were, domestic conflict and things like that. So you get feedback that they can even stand back from that and not take things so personally, not be so scared by things, or obviously not very, very dangerous situations, because we were very careful with the evaluations we got back to check and make sure that some of them used those as routes to help us also to transfer cases that the children hadn't even spoken before, but very rare. Mostly it was helping them sleep, etc. But the metaphors that were used in the program were just wonderful. I fell in love with them. And I actually use them with adults as well. So we would talk about how the mind is like a puppy. So it wanders all over the place. It brings back things that you weren't expecting. It'll play with things, and while you're trying to stay calm, makes a mess. Those kind of things. And people get that. You're like, why can my mind? Why? It's working overtime. Well, my mind is working overtime. Yeah, because it's like a puppy. You need to train your mind.
Yeah.
Okay, because we never learn to do that. We don't even stop these days in a lot of cases. We need to just take a moment, whatever it is you're doing. As I said, you could be playing golf, you could be gardening, but just take a moment to stand back from everything that's going on outside, the people outside. And this is how we connect back to us. Yeah, we are not outside ourselves, we're here. So just teaching them to bring the puppy back and have it heal. And how do we do that? With kindness. We don't kick puppies. We treat them with respect, and like we respect ourselves, kind, gentle, but disciplined. If it wanders off, we bring it back. And because the metaphors were so powerful, and people, they made it accessible to people, I found. And I love making things democratic, accessible. No, none of this, too complicated concepts that we have to go and search for. No, we don't search for it. It's here. We just need to understand the basic building blocks and let people go off and explore themselves.
Right.
So Leviathan, as I was teaching, I wanted to give tools as well to young people so that they could start learning about themselves. I had quite a traumatic teen time, not because of my parents or my family or anything like that. I had difficulty understanding who I was. I thought I was quite complex at the time, and I didn't seem to fit anywhere, even if I had great friends, but just it was all me, like inside of me, it felt chaotic. And I didn't have any tools to understand this transformation process that I was going through. And so Leviathan was my way of giving back, I guess, that phase to young people. Not that it will help them understand everything, but it's mixing both inspiration from a coaching profile, which is the one that's used by NASA. So process communications actually was quickly picked up by NASA after it was invented to help people to understand their specific or their principal psychological need. Okay, so when they know that, if you put somebody who's stressed and their principal need is for them to be in their bubble and away from other people so that they can find calm, you put them with somebody who needs contact when they're stressed, okay, that's going to create conflict. Okay? But so that's one thing, it'll help us to understand relations to other people. Why does somebody bug me when I need space? Okay, they won't leave me alone. Okay, understanding diversity. But also, I just thought it would be so empowering if through the characters, children could understand just that, maybe even that one basic need that they have, or just understand through their hero's journey, the kind of journey that I might go on, which might be different from somebody else's journey to understanding my needs and my way of functioning. Okay, so it's just inspired from that particular model. It's not something which is specifically like that. The books also contain elements of how to find mindfulness, how to use being in the flow to create, and does that have a difference when we create differently? So different elements like that I've learned through my journey. And the idea was to bring together pedagogical concepts like that, some tools they could use without it being rigid or classroom, etc., but with a really magical story to make it fun, because sometimes we don't make these things fun. And we know that learning, when there's the emotion that goes through it as well, people remember more as well, and it's just nicer. Why not? If we can have fun while we do, why not? Spirituality doesn't have to be serious. And
Absolutely.
I've been to so many conferences where it's serious, and there's a time for being serious, but I don't think it's when we're a child. And I think even as adults, we can have fun as we're doing these things. So
and I think you hit on something important, because adult, teenager, even children when our mind is allowed to open up a little bit through lack of seriousness, so getting caught up in a fantasy or a scenario that is outside of your norm, that I think for me anyway, it gives you an opportunity to let go of some rigidity that you would be more open to learn or take in new information because it's fascinating and it's new. But like you said, when you're in a very sterile and dry situation and it's deeply analytical and we must observe the empirical, you know, that can wear on us. And so I think you're hitting the nail square on the head when you say that it's an opportunity to learn in a new manner by opening up the imagination and the wonder that comes from fantasy or even just novelty, right? So that's beautiful.
That's nicely summarized. Yeah.
It just, well, it makes perfect.
Yeah, when we're so fixed on either making an impression or getting things right, or we miss all the, apart from the wonder,
Right.
we miss all of the integration.
Absolutely. Now, I'll qualify that by saying if you're going to be a mechanical engineer, you have to go through the rigmarole. But when you're learning things like you said, like spirituality and human social relations and culture and sensibilities of trusting others and learning to know that we are different and diverse, I think that's when we do have to employ that novelty or that unique concept of apprehending information. So, and each of your volumes revolves around a theme or a couple of themes, right? As they progress.
Yeah, so it's actually, it's future.
Mm-hmm.
So it's future fantasy. So it's set in 2093, where there are 6 different tribes who have to work together to build this new collective way of like utopia. But each tribe is therefore inspired by one of these profiles. But behind that, as I say, is not just the coaching profile. It opens up also ideas about, some of them have been inspired by, for example, the Hawaiian way of living. So when we talk about the profile, this is the second book, The Seasons, they're people that actually need to be in their bubble. But being in nature when you need to be in your bubble is a great thing as well. Not to say we all do, but it's really good for calming down.
Right.
So what I wanted to also infuse in there is that there are some values in different cultures or different ways of being together, that we can also use as inspiration to build how we want to be in the future, which was a little bit how we went through the corporate transformation, was to say which elements do we keep and which don't we keep. So I like the idea of saying that there's not one approach which is right. Each person can be inspired from quotations from different cultures, and we can even mix them together. So I want those books that were particularly oriented towards the same values as one of these tribes. I wanted to integrate little grains just to encourage the dialogue around diversity. And again, nothing is imposed. The books are just little ideas of, did you think about this? And to try and encourage people to talk in class. We don't give enough voice, and we don't encourage young people enough to think about philosophy. What does it mean to be happy? What does it mean to feel good? How do we work together? What's social inclusion? So there are themes behind each book. So this one is around nature. And there's another one around social inclusion. There's another one around justice. And what does justice mean to you? What's the use of power? What's good use of power or bad use of power? So there's one of the themes of the books is around that. So there are different things to encourage dialogue, which is fundamentally the most important thing for me.
Absolutely. And now, if I understand correctly, that the books have a support system behind them for teachers, so they can be worked with in a classroom environment. And so you have a support package for those teachers that comes with the books.
Yeah, there are teachers' notes that I've written.
Okay.
And I started off by writing them a little bit in the classic way, just to say, on page, just to encourage the dialogue around those themes. But what I've tried to include as well are questions which will encourage self-reflection. So to take that first step in building empathy. emotional intelligence. So it kind of says not just what was the character thinking, it's how do you relate to the character? Do you find yourself needing to step back, overwhelmed? Well, have a think about it, because maybe you're the kind of person that's like this character, or maybe you're like the person that needs contact. So it's just, it's not questions right, wrong. There's little parts of it, self-reflection, and encouraging people to question, little exercises to get people to work together, or think about diversity. What's your best friend like? Do they function like you? So inquiry.
And that's a foundational element to well-being, to thriving, I think, is inquiry. I think inquiry, just my opinion, my little soapbox, inquiry, there's a lot of power there. And so presenting the stories that you do and inviting the empathetic reaction or consideration of the characters is brilliant to work with people in that regard, or young people, to develop that skill, like you said, to develop a type of emotional intelligence and salience of not just yourself, but how do you fit in, and how do others fit with you in social context. So that's beautiful and amazing. That's just these are the things that I seek out. And
very little of it.
Yeah, unfortunately. Do you see the possibility of expansion of this system that you have? In other words, you're writing new books, but also is animation a possibility to sort of add another layer or another dimension to this nice system of learning, teaching?
Yeah, well, the current books are actually based, because they're 2093, they're actually based on the 4th generation from right now. So it starts in 2027. It kind of looks back from there a little bit at what happened and how we got there. But it's really the hero's journey of this 4th generation, the teens. But there are a few characters that appear who are like grandparents. They're the founders. They're the people that in 2027 were really questioning, like a lot of people perhaps today, about ecology. What are we doing with social justice? All these kind of things. So imagine that we created some collective intelligence at that time to try and really cross all of these disciplines to see what we could learn from everyone. And that was the idea behind Reviathan. But we didn't really see these characters. So I've gone back to start writing the life of those initial founders, because somebody said to me, I was actually talking to a few filmmakers, etc., because I've been told that it would be great for screen. And I really would like to make it accessible to so many young people. Whether they read, they don't read audio, whatever their backgrounds or how they take in information from around us. And they said to me, there's stories, quite a few stories about, the future or whatever, but nobody ever says how we got there. And I was like, well, I don't want to tell people how we got there. That's not the point. But just to trace, the lives of those people that have gone through those 3-4 generations could be interesting, because they do appear. So they have their own hero's journey. So I've started writing about them. Nice.
And I think that would help a teenager to also be curious about how current situation, so what happened in 1975 there, in the 70s, that brought us to where we are now. And so it gives you that mechanism of inquiry again, to be curious, not only about your present, but what potentials lie in the future, and what notes can be taken about the past. So that's great. That's a developmental process there. So that's wonderful. We'll look forward to possible development on the horizon for that. But yeah, when you're talking about this series and the books, I think, and I'm not hip and I'm not cool at all. I don't know what's popular with younger people. So, but in my bubble that I live in, I think like a series, like a cartoon series or an animated series, not cartoon, that's kind of like Bugs Bunny, but an animated series that conveys this spirit and the theme and literally the narrative that you've constructed So if that's still going on, again, I'm so out of touch with what's going on in young people's lives, but an animated series seems really great, or even big screen. I mean, if you could work up a trilogy or something like that out of all of your content, that would be awesome too. But series would be really neat. And as you said, some kids,
Well, this book's actually coming out.
yeah, and some kids like to read, and other kids like to stare at a screen. And I'm stare at a screen stage now. I mean, I read a lot of books, but I would prefer to take some information in that way as well, by looking at a short film or something like that. So documentary. Very exciting.
Yeah.
Very
I mean,
exciting.
I'm not anti-screen as well. I'm a mindfulness teacher, and I think it's important that children don't stay stuck on screens, but they are part of our life. And I think, just my opinion, but like they're integrated as part of their life. So this generation are going to build something which suits them. And I always find it funny that each generation builds something and then the next generation undoes it. It's like, why don't we talk about what we build? We can build it together,
Yeah.
Like, let's have some dialogue. Let's include you now. And instead of just wasting time and energy of you unbuilding something and everybody criticizing, no, you can't be connected the whole time. Well, they just are. So, and I think being connected is an interesting concept, because for me, when people say we're worried about the future, look at our children, they're so absorbed, etc. Maybe there are always things that we can improve, and there are always things that people can criticize. If we just take our reality now, what I see is that our children, I will be very surprised if they sacrifice in future that connectedness when they build something else. It's so vital for them. Whereas when we grew, we learned to collaborate. We've had to write books to learn how to collaborate, because we went through school. We went through these processes where, okay, find your path, build your career, your family, then build your community. It's not that we've been extracted from community, but it was so much more, I think, individualistic than the connected society that our children are actually part of now. And I think even if they haven't learned to build, they will learn to build in future, and they won't sacrifice that connectedness, which is going to be very, very interesting to see. I think the kinds of organizations that they come up with, I think, are going to be very interesting.
Yeah.
If we
No, I completely agree. I take an optimist view on where we are right now. I think we're in a learning phase when it comes to this new and novel phenomena of internet, or technologically based connection. And so we're learning our mistakes right now. And I think we'll get through that okay. So in other words, I'm looking at the shadow side of social media, the things that can come out of that are not pro-social or productive.
Absolutely.
I think we'll navigate that, because we've had other instances in history where technology has done things that we kind of have to pull back and take some notes and move forward. But I think, like you said, our younger ones it's intuitive for them, whereas for my age and maybe up into the 40s or whatever, or 30s, that there are learning curves there, but there may not be as many learning curves there. And I think with the right steering and mentoring from adults to make sure that vulnerable children at a vulnerable stage are learning to use this power in a better way, and seeing what we're going through right now, I think we'll come out on the other end. And we are a social species. So this is to me, it makes sense as a step in a direction. You can't judge it. It's just a step in a direction of development, as we are social creatures. So I see the shadow side of it, and I see some negativity, but I think that it's learnable. And if we are prudent, that we can take that, the lessons learned that we're making in this era and carry on, and they'll be fine, because the benefits will be great. Go ahead.
If we take the best of it, I think it's like our minds. If we let it get out of hand, and obviously as a mindfulness teacher, I've seen so many cases where children's attention span is obviously, affected by that, or their social connection, whatever. So I'm not blind to that, but I'm also not blind to the fact that it's part of their life. And I think, like disciplining your mind, you become the master of the tool. Yeah, you know when to turn it off, and so it's
Right.
helping our children obviously through that. But yeah, we can certainly take the best of technology and the best of what nature offers to us, and I believe there's some balance you need to find there. And I think that's part of Revive, was kind of, some of them are innovators. The first book is about creating from the heart, innovating in a way. What does it mean to innovate to a benefit of the collective rather than necessarily personal? Do we judge the personal? What's an artist at the end of the day? Is that personal or is it collective?
Yeah.
Let the children talk about that. How do we use our resources? Is art okay? Is it squandering resources? I don't know. But all the technology side of things, how is that helping us lighten our life, maybe even? Not carrying so many things around. How, on the other side of things, the other books are about nature and connecting to nature. So yeah, the idea is really to get that dialogue going. I believe there's some balance there, and I think we haven't found it yet, but I'm sure we'll progress.
Oh, we will. We will. And, earlier today I was thinking about, or maybe it was yesterday, there's something called extended mind theory that people like David Chalmers put forward. And you could take it very literally and get into deep philosophical discussion about it. But also, I think there's a utility that all of us can intuit and think about. And that is that computers are essentially an extension of your mind, not consciousness. That's a whole other thing, but just the practical day-to-day mind. And so these kids have a beautiful opportunity, and we do have a beautiful opportunity to take advantage of expanding learning and awareness and all these things. So yeah, there's so many bright sides and upsides to this means of mind, essentially, because like you said, we're computers and social media and stuff. It's a reflection of us. It's a reflection of our thinking process and so forth. So, there's some opportunities there that I think will be of great benefit, I believe, for the species and overall. And I read a couple of your blogs, and you talk about the collective and individualism and sort of the need to develop a sensibility about where the boundaries are in individualism and being able to navigate the collective and working with the collective as an individual. And by collective, it's just our social structure, jobs, family, networking with friends and people you have to deal with in life. So, and I think that's a great issue to pose to people because there's a lot of confusion, I think, with individualism, and there's also confusion with who we are as a social system, as entities, persons with a social nature. So I like that you are including that in your work, that you bring that challenge to people and say, well, what is individualism and where are the benefits of it, and how can you get carried away with that to the point where it's not productive? And each one of us is different, so it's not that there's boundaries, but we just have to ask those questions, right? Back to inquiry.
Absolutely. No, I think it's fundamental. Pretty much every culture talks about loving ourselves and loving the people around us. What's the balance? If you don't love yourself, you don't actually have much to give to other people, and that's a hard lesson to learn. I certainly learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
But yeah, we often sometimes give too much, and vice versa, or we're too individualistic and we're not part of the collective. We don't give to there is a balance to find. As you say, as parents, put your oxygen mask first. You can't give, otherwise you just drain yourself. And this is why knowing yourself as a basis, for me, is absolutely fundamental. It's not a selfish thing to do, to go on that path, to understand yourself, to take the time to do that, because I think when you do, you understand what what your qualities are, what your passion is that you can share with other people, and that just makes it even more magical and sort of exponential afterwards. And because we're so complementary, well, we can respect that in other people as well. So it's both are very important, but it's an individual. It's an interesting journey that each of us go through to find that alignment.
Right. Yeah, it's highly subjective. And so it can't be standardized, right? It has to, and it's flexible too. People have to be selfish sometimes, or individualistic sometimes for self-care and for retreat, but like you said, there's a healthy boundary. And it's funny, I looked up selfish in the dictionary, which is a very simple word, but the treatment that it was given by Webster in the dictionary, it has a very negative connotation. It has a very negative um, meaning to it. And I thought that was interesting because I see selfishness on a spectrum. And so you can be a doormat and be completely selfless and not, and doormat is kind of a charged word, but you can be one end of the spectrum where you can be ultra selfish and egotistical and, you know, stingy and all these things. But there's a spectrum there. And so I think selfishness deserves a little bit of a lighter handling and treatment when it comes to what it means semantically, because I think that can be used to a good end, because we have to be selfish at times. And, you know, like you said, to put the mask on so that you can be there for other people, and that you can provide at a greater capacity without depleting yourself. So anyway, that's just an editorial. The selfishness needs a revision. Or somebody can just school me and give me a better word for it.
Yeah, everything does. The last book is actually, it talks about duality, because that tribe are about justice. And we talk about, well, who's right, who's wrong, what is right and wrong. So again, we can have a great debate in class about what's right and what's wrong, talk all day. But we have a register of where we can place pretty much anything when we talk about duality. And so it's just a position, we're just positioning ourselves against or with something else when we make those value judgments. So whether we're talking about selfishness, guilt, even just judging other people's actions or behavior, they're just beliefs, really, aren't they? And so it's just a reference to decide how I function. How am I going to be in relation to that particular reference? And I think it's important also to talk about those concepts and understand how our beliefs, even when we're young, just open the idea of how our beliefs affect how we relate to other people and how we judge other people through those guilt, fear, etc. What we've learned, according to, you know, how we've even grown up just you know, until 10 years old, 12 years old. So yeah, very interesting. Yeah,
and you touch on, in I believe it was one of your YouTube videos, on we are ourselves, but we also have a narrative of ourselves, and we have a current narrative of where we are now, but we have a narrative of our history. And sometimes that narrative, and people who actually have authority have said that, not, you know, I have no authority, so I'm saying that I've listened to people who have authority on these kind of deep behavioral mechanisms, and the idea of the self from the past is often confabulated. It's often this construct that we put together, especially go deep history into our lives. We tend to embellish, or we tend to leave out, omit, depending on what we're dealing with. And so you call that out, and you call that to mind, that when we recite our history. So in other words, to have a healthier means of recitation of history of ourselves, that the loosening of that belief, that sort of willingness, again, to be an inquirer, an inquisitive person, you know, somebody who's just asking questions rather than making statements. So I love that you do that and you present that. It's something that is one of my pets that I like to work with, is, you know, be just a little more open about how you narrate things, about, especially, you know, about yourself, you know, editorializing. Yeah. So, yeah. So it's a great,
we talk about with children, we talk about,
yeah.
So we say to them, you know, this is our gift, you know, as people. We can imagine, we can create new things because of that imagination. Isn't it great? But if you close your eyes, you know, and you think of you, so you have the image of me, for example, or whatever's the person that's in front of you. Can you imagine them wearing like a white jumper? Yeah, you might be able to imagine them, but is it the truth? You know, is it your truth? Whose truth is it? And when you open your eyes, are they wearing white? No, we can fabricate so many things, and just so a child, they get from those basic concepts the difference between what I imagine to be true and what is either factually true, or, as I say, the concept, what am I telling myself? What is this narrative that I'm telling myself about what's true? And so that observation step is absolutely fundamental, which we also use obviously in nonviolent communication to try and stand back from the emotion of that as well. So it's used an awful lot in so many approaches. Yeah.
Would you mind unpacking nonviolent communication a little bit? I had a guest on a couple months ago named Simone, and Simone Anliker, and she had talked about nonviolent communication. But for this interview, would you just give us a little abstract on what nonviolent communication is?
Oh, I'm not a teacher
Right.
or a facilitator of nonviolent communication, so it's having been through the process with those trainers and put it in place, and I've actually used it with my children. So it's a way of giving form to potentially conflictual situations, where we try and stand back from just blaming each other or trying to impose what it is that we want. We have to take a moment to factually state, rather than "you are always late," for example. It's like, I have been waiting for 10 minutes. I've been sitting here for 10 minutes. That's a fact. Okay, we agreed to meet 10 minutes ago. That's another fact. We go into how I'm feeling about that. So I feel frustrated. Okay. And then we go into the needs. Okay, so we can actually say at the end what we need. I forgot one of the steps actually live, but we actually at the end go into what I need from you, so I can make a request to the other person. And so I can kind of say, okay, next time if you're going to be late, it would be great if you could send me a message, and that way I won't be frustrated, or I won't be worried knowing where you are. But what's important about nonviolent communication is speaking from the I, from myself. I take responsibility for how I feel about the situation. I give the opportunity to state the facts. So if the other person doesn't agree with the facts, they can say something about that. Sorry, the emotion, and then the need behind that. That's the step I messaged, the third. So I get the opportunity to honor what I feel about the situation. So I feel frustrated by that. The other person gets to hear how I feel, and whether they validate or not is another thing, but I'm honoring myself when I do that. Then the need behind that is, I have a need for what? So this is where I have to think a little bit and start to get to know myself. Do I need security? What did it make me feel insecure? I have a need to feel, I won't say respected, because that's a word which is projection in itself. But I have a need to feel clarity, for example. So I didn't have clarity, and I'm the kind of person that needs clarity. So I honor my need in that stage. So because I need clarity, I'm going to make a request next time to say, can you send a message so I know where you are or what time you're going to arrive roughly? So I'm clear, and I can make a choice as an adult whether I stay or whether I leave. But if I have no idea and I'm not in this clarity, I don't know what decision to make, and I'm just getting in. So this is just, at the end, was just my narrative. I'm just explaining what we're trying to get out of.
Yeah.
But by making that request, I'm, as an adult, saying to the other person, next time, because it might repeat, next time, could you do this to help me? And the thing that's universal about human beings is that need. When you ask someone to help you with a need, more often than not, people will respond to that. There is something which is just subconscious about that.
Okay.
And so most often we can receive that, because I'm not blaming or attacking somebody else. I'm saying, I have a need for clarity. Can you help me with my need for clarity? It's not you, it's what happened in the situation. So that's what's nice about it. And when I first started using nonviolent communication, apart from just in the company, I started using it at home. And I remember a discussion with my daughter and my son, who must have been about 6 and 9 at the time.
Okay.
And they were having a dispute about, I can't even remember what, but like not agreeing on who was going first for something. And I just said, as a mum, okay, as a mum, my need is for you both to be secure, okay, in this particular circumstance, or that something is fair, or whatever it was. But I remember saying to both of them, if you can find a solution that suits, so your sister said what her needs, you said what you need, like if whoever finds a solution is okay for me. If it works for you, it works for me as well. And I just remember my son, it was like a light bulb that just lit up. his mind. He's like this 6-year-old. If I find a solution, like I get to apply my solution, like this is great for negotiation.
Yeah.
They've stopped negotiating since, so be careful.
Oh yeah.
But for creating that respect and the dialogue and that sort of collective intelligence, and it was an eye-opener for me as well, because I thought nonviolent communication was just about the relationship, solving the conflict, giving form to the way we talk so that we can actually understand each other and try and get on the same page. But what I realized in that moment was that if we shared these approaches with young people, and that they saw from that if they came up with win-win solutions that took into account the needs of other people, that they could pretty much invent everything. That creative mind becomes extremely powerful. So they're not sitting there being, dependent or disempowered by what's going on around them. They realize when they're young that if I think about not just me, other people, and I can use my imagination, I can solve problems. And that was just huge for me at the time.
Sure, absolutely empowering.
For me and for him, so it's great.
Yeah, everybody got a piece of that. Yeah, for sure. And so what I'm hearing is that sounds great is it's healthy boundary setting. What you were describing as the person who was late and you speaking your piece, but doing it in a way that's solution oriented is good, healthy boundary setting, so that it's preventative in that sense that maybe the next time it happens, they will have been put on notice that these things are not acceptable, or whatever the softer terminology for that is.
But it's like saying in the next instant, if it happens again and you didn't give me clarity, well, if I decide to leave because I don't have the clarity, don't be surprised, because I took an adult decision rather than being angry that I'd rather leave.
Yeah, very pragmatic.
Or if I'm angry again, since I already made a request.
Yeah,
But you can't, as well, you can't force the other person to change for you. And as well, I can make a request, but if you can't meet, it's okay to disagree. So this is also teaching people that we can agree to disagree as well. If we can't find a solution, then but we can try.
That's it. And you've labeled yourself as a pragmatist, and that's very good pragmatic thinking. It's just these are the cards on the table, and we'll work with them as we will. So wise words. So let's move to Generation A. I want to make sure we get that included in our conversation. If you could let us know a little bit about that, that would be neat.
Generation A is it's a charity that we set up actually when we started teaching mindfulness. I set it up in France with 2 other people to be able to work in schools. Okay. As it's important that it was a neutral way. Obviously, we're not talking. It's very important. We're actually teaching a British program which is based on John Kabat-Zinn's NBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction. Okay. The young people's version. So obviously, no religion in there. Things like that. So we just wanted something which is very neutral. It's important as well in French schools because with them being laïque, so non-religious. So it was really started for that. Allowed us to teach in many different schools, both public and private, and be sponsored for that sometimes too. Sometimes, not always. So that was going for a few years. It's actually still there, but the other people got very busy with doing other things as well, still teaching, moving to Denmark, things like that, looking at the schools over there. Okay. So still teaching the same thing, but I'm doing it mostly independently now, and I'm spending time with my writing. So part of my journey, but which allowed me to work. I think it's so important to work in classrooms or in collective situations. And I think that's what it taught me more than anything was normalizing things, not necessarily normalizing what you're teaching, but normalizing the experience of teens going through difficulty, for example. Very, very powerful, because when you talk to a whole class about the fact that everybody has a bad day sometimes, when they're looking on social media and everything looks perfect and there's only the perfect selfies and, there's beautiful pictures of where people have been on holiday or things like that. You only see part, this, only see part of the reality, but they are so influenceable when they're young. That just talking about what do we do when we have a bad day, and it's okay. There are tools, and everybody has them. So, and what we feel as well. When we do inquiry in classrooms as well, we actually ask those that want to talk about what they felt when they did a mindfulness exercise. Some people, they explain they feel different things, and they wake up and they go, oh, that's interesting. My neighbor didn't feel what I felt, when I was trying to feel, anchored, or, I felt a bit stiff, or, I felt an emotion which was different from somebody else. I felt a little bit anxious. It made me laugh. All of these kind of things, very, very important for helping young people who are trying to work through emotions or just trying to understand who they are compared to other people. That, so many of these things are normal and we don't talk about them.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest gift there of actually working collectively in schools. And just one of the fabulous things was going back to the same schools a year after or 2 years afterwards, and them saying, like, we started with the eldest in a middle school, and middle school, primary school, so depending on who's watching from where.
Yeah.
Like, so the 9 to 10-year-olds. So we taught them first year, and the head teacher called us back in for the following year, said, we'd really like you to come and talk to the other teachers, because what we're seeing is they're no longer walking around like, I'm the oldest and I can tell you how to behave. This is what you do, no bullying in the schoolyard. They were actually taking care of the young ones because we were teaching them about, benevolence, and they were feeling better about themselves. So they weren't attacking other people so much. So things like that started to change the culture of the school. And so it's great feedback. And so there are things like that where, you're being asked to come back in to then work with the rest of the school was just absolutely magical for me, because we didn't go in there with a particular objective.
Okay.
And then the teachers went at the beginning of the following year, said to us, and we said, we can accompany you obviously to explain to parents. It's important to explain to them what the program is that their children are going to go through, obviously, and give them a choice. And when you do that, the teachers the following year said, no, don't worry, we don't need you there, because most parents know what mindfulness is these days, and we feel like we can answer the questions. Yes, okay, we'll transfer. Yeah, you're not meant to be there eternally. So the more that's being picked up both within the school and also society, things are progressing. When we think they're not progressing and there are little feedbacks like that, it's very encouraging. So,
A ray of light, for sure.
Great, yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, I hope that in whatever way is perfect for itself, it has a good future, however that manifests, however it unfolds. I wish it well, because it's necessary.
Thank you. It's in transformation, so I'm just waiting to see who wants to work with me.
Yeah, I'm not adding any charge to it. I was just like, I see it. I wish it the best for the future, because I think that is critical, and it's an essential. I'll put that on it. I'll say it could have great value for teaching children. And you hit something earlier a moment ago when you were talking about children who go online and they go to Twitter or whatever the thing is right now, TikTok, and they see perfection, and they see people being beyond what's normal in the sense of aesthetic or whatever. And it reminded me of what you're doing. Somebody could pick up and teach young people at a good stage, whatever that age is, and I don't know that, about that simulation of reality that is that sector of media and technology. Yeah. And we talked about earlier, there's a shadow side to it, and that's precisely one of the things that I think is so deleterious and so harmful to young minds. And so wouldn't that be great if somebody could come along? I know Baudrillard, who was a French philosopher, the postmodernist philosopher, and existentialist, and he came up with that simulacra, simulation, and hyper reality. And it was a critique in the early 90s of reality television, which was just starting to come out, and other things. But it says, that things become a simulation of a simulation, and you get lost in it, and you don't even know what's real anymore. And that's a dangerous scenario. He was pointing in that direction. So wouldn't it be great if, along the lines with what you've done, that somebody could present something in a contextually appropriate way for children to recognize the simulacra or the non-real nature of those people who are what they call influencers, or the people that look up to, and it's totally unrealistic, whether it's body image, whether it's female identity or gender identity, period. However that plays out. When you were talking earlier,
there are people.
Good. That makes me feel better, because my heart.
I don't know if there are enough, but there are people
Right.
out there I've come across who are teaching these things, fortunately, because there's so much online these days that could harm too.
Yeah, my heart breaks for some of the, I get little, I don't pay too much attention to the news, but I catch things from time to time about how young people are being impacted adversely about that. So it's a new type of bullying. We just had schoolyard bullies when I was a kid. And you either you walk away or you punch them in the face. It was very simple back then, but now it's not. I mean, because that's part of their world, and you can't walk away sometimes. It's difficult. So anyway, well, here's to the success of that too. But anyway,
difficult area.
Yeah. No, I think that's a rich field for people to pay some mind to, and here's to that. Here's to that. Was there anything else you wanted to put out and cover for our listening audience, or anything that coming up? Any? Of course, you were talking about perhaps forthcoming volumes of your book, so that's good for those who are here to.
Hopefully, screen work will come up soon.
That'll be great.
I've sent it to a few producers. So let's see.
That'll be great.
It would be fun. That's the most important thing. It would be fun.
It would be fun, and it would, and again, and I think it would be a mechanism for distribution and of the ideas and what you're working with, that would have greater reach. The books are good, but this is another mechanism for getting into people's minds and getting thoughts going in new places, new locations, new heads.
Like, since we're talking about getting out of our mind, I'm just about to start a campaign on being out of our minds as well at the moment, because I just think it's such a great way to say, everybody says you're out of your mind to do that, as if it's some kind of a negative thing, but it's good to get out of your mind and into your body and calm. So we're going to use that as a way to sort of remind people that, say how their beliefs are affecting them, how that, it's affecting our prejudices at the moment, how it can be affecting our stress, our fear, with all the transformation on the go at the moment, actually getting out of, getting into that state of calm and out of that hamster wheel. So important. So, I guess as a reminder, especially to young people at the moment, there's so much chaos going on outside, that take a step back, and the collective is important, but coming back to yourself, just even for a minute every day, is so important.
That is worth its weight in gold, because like you said, and I've been doing mindfulness for a while, and I found that it's changed how I interact with everything, persons and happenstantial things in the environment. I am, and I'm nowhere near there's never an arrival as far as I'm concerned. But if I, like you said, if I can get out of my constructs, my narrative, and the chatterbox just long enough to catch myself before I react or I start making judgment calls on things, that it's helped me. So if that's a testimonial for anyone who's curious out there, that it has value, it has a great import. So
and I'd like to just add that, again, I come across so many adults as well who are learning mindfulness. They find it so difficult, because a lot of them try and start with 20 minutes or half an hour or something like that. So just start with 2 minutes. It's like anything, putting in new behaviors. Start small. Just try and sit down at the edge of your bed for 2 minutes in the morning, nothing more. And yes, everything's going to come into your head because you're actually calm for once. So you get all your to-do list. It's very normal.
Yeah.
But just 2 minutes. 2 minutes becomes 2 minutes 30, 3 minutes, 4, and it becomes like a practice that we get into afterwards. You miss when you don't do it.
Oh, sure,
So,
sure.
that's
Yeah. I had a great conversation on Friday with a woman who's my handler slash supervisor for a volunteer program that I do, and she's a social worker up in New York City. And we were checking in with each other because I work with I volunteer with people, seniors, and so we were connecting on that. And she was asking me about mindfulness, and she goes, "It just takes so much discipline, and it takes. I want to do it, but I don't know, you know." And I said, first of all, I said, it's not about being in the lotus position with your mudras and things like that. I said, take a walk down this, because she lives in Brooklyn. So, you know, being out in nature could be a challenge, but there are parks. And I said, if you're walking, just be the observer of the environment you're in. And you may have walked that street 100 times, but observe the architecture and what the windows look like and the buildings and the colors of the vehicles going by. And if you can get the mind engaged in that landscape and just observing, then you're on your way. And she's like, really? I said, oh yeah. I said, or, you know, doing dishes, that's one of my favorite. When I was younger, when I was in my 20s, I loved that kind of, because I would just stop thinking and I would just do repetitive tasks. So I said, you are already meditating, you're already doing that. She's like, oh good. And I said, so you can graduate to the, you know, the classic stuff, but just appreciate appreciate the fact you're already there. And she's like, cool. So worked out
it's
good.
exactly that. If you feel good in the instant, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And there's a great tool with children. So if you're outside and they're a bit excited, as you're saying, observing what's going on, 5 things. So ask them for 5 things that they can see, 4 things that they can hear, 3 things that they can touch, 2 things that they can smell, and 1 thing that they can taste. If you're trying to embed a memory, it's a great way to do it at a party, or just if you're on a holiday and you want them to remember something, or just to anchor, because that actually creates the emotion. It creates a real connection to what's going on around them and teaches them to take a moment, not just to observe, but to realign. So I think there's a Swiss psychologist, but I'll try and give you the link for that. Swiss psychologist that came up with that way of just encouraging them just to be in the moment, which kids are great at doing anyway, but it's a fun exercise, which of course adults can do.
Yeah. No, that's a beautiful counting back and then engaging all of the senses and the awareness of the senses. That's brilliant. I've never even heard of that, so that's beautiful. So thank you for passing that on. Yeah, and if you could pass the link, I'll attach it below if anybody's interested. That would be great. That would be great. Well, Nadia, I am again grateful that we had an opportunity to get together and talk, and that in this talk we were able to present what you're doing, because I think what you're doing is important, and I would love to check in with you down the road and see where things are going. So perhaps we can do a part 2. I'll stay in touch with you, and myself and the viewers can get updates from you. But again, what you're doing is, to me, is critical, and so I thank you for that. And I will be there on your side, rooting you on, cheering you on from afar, remotely. But yeah.
Whatever side is fine for me. It's like, when we're okay with whatever's there, I think we're in a good place. No. Yeah, if each of us children can learn to just be okay. Just in the
because they are the products we're creating for the future.
Absolutely. And we talk about emotional intelligence like as being the most important thing, empathy. Well, we don't really give the tools to learn that. So I think it's important. It's nothing righteous in that. It's just, it should be practical. It should be part of our curriculum. If we want an empathic society, put the tools in place. How are we going to get there otherwise?
Yeah. And it's easy to use your imagination that if persons were more self-aware and aware of shadow and light of being empathetic or being detached and not engaging with
drama.
Not caring about your behavior or its impact on others. You can imagine a world where if there is more empathy, there's more compassion and more connection, then it's not hard to imagine functionality and coherence falling into line. So we can certainly list all the things that are going that are incoherent and dysfunctional about our culture and our society, but I think the root can be to plant those seeds of empathy and compassion and awareness of self and others, and the stories we tell each other about ourselves and others. Just to be aware and have that salience, I think, is so valuable. So you're doing good work.
Let's see. Let's see where it takes us.
Yeah. But like I said, just turning on your imagination, you can see that if children are and I like the fact, and you've mentioned this a couple of times, that there is no dogma hanging over it, that it's so simple. It is just experiential states, and it's nothing that you don't have to pack it full of any kind of anything. It can be very simple and very parsimonious to present to people. And I think that's one of the beautiful things too, is it's so simple. It's so simple.
It's presenting it, giving options, really. That they can use or they don't use it.
For sure.
I think it's important not to influence people, like not to tell people what's right or wrong. So as I say, my tools are all intended just to give the opportunity just to understand and take it or not. Some children don't use them.
It's like a brush and canvas, right? And some paint. I'll set a brush in front of you, a canvas in front of you, and some paint. And you can walk away, or you can create a beautiful painting, or you can just, like me, I would just, I'd go nuts and just make something weird, but we all do it differently. So
indeed.
But that brilliant painting will change others. It will impact others. And no one, if you walk away, will ever know what potential you had in terms of turning something out that's whatever, appreciable.
Everyone has a hero's journey, and that's something I keep telling the kids too. Don't look at, you can look at mentors, but you have your own hero's journey as well. So taking them through that.
Well, again, Nadia,
thank you for having me, Justin.
It was an honor. It was an honor having you.
Great job sharing with other people too. I was delighted when you offered me the opportunity. So thank you. And I'd love to connect again.
Yes. We'll stay in touch, and we'll give it a little bit of time for things to progress, and we'll touch base with you. But if you have anything that you ever want to announce, let me know, and I can put you on, and you can use this as a platform to make those big announcements, like
when I finish writing.
More books, or I was trying to think of a great way to say a film or a series or anything like that, which would be just absolutely wonderful.
I promise you'll be one of the first to know then.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great. Exclusive. So anyway, well, again, thank you for your time. And thank you, YouTube viewers who are watching this. If you're still with us, those of you who hang into the end of these interviews, I appreciate your company. And I will have all information necessary to get a hold of Nadia's work and to see what she's doing and stay current with her. That will all be provided in the description below. So YouTube viewers, thank you so much. Audience, I deeply grateful for your attendance. And Nadia, I'll say goodbye to you after I hit record, but I'll say goodbye to you now on YouTube. And once again, offer my gratitude for your company. All right, and I'm going to stop now.